أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, today we'll continue from the 19th word, which we started last week, regarding the topic being the messengership of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we read the first droplet last week, and discussed it to a certain extent, but it might also be helpful to reread it since it's not too long, and address some questions or comments still regarding it. So let's do that, and then I'll ask, especially those who were here last week, to just maybe offer a quick summary of the discussion that we had around it. But I'll read it quickly. The 19th word begins with, I could not praise Muhammad with my words. Rather, my words were made praiseworthy by Muhammad. Yes, this word is beautiful, but what makes it so is the most beautiful of all things, the attributes and qualities of Muhammad. Also, being the 14th flash, this word consists of 14 droplets. The first droplet, there are three great and universal things which make known to us our sustainer. One is the book of the universe, a jot of whose testimony we have heard from the 13 flashes together with the 13th word of the Risale Nur. Another is the seal of the prophets, peace and blessings be upon him, the supreme sign of the book of the universe. The other is the Quran of mighty stature. Now we must become acquainted with the seal of the prophets, peace be upon him, who is the second and articulate proof, and must listen to him. Yes, consider the collective personality of this proof. The face of the earth has become his mosque, Mecca his mihrab, and Medina his pulpit or minbar. Our Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, this clear proof, is leader of all the believers, preacher to all mankind, the chief of all the prophets, Lord of all the saints, the leader of a circle for the remembrance of God comprising all the prophets and saints. He is a luminous tree whose living fruits are all the prophets, and fresh fruits are all the saints, whose claims all the prophets relying on their miracles, and all the saints relying on their wonder-working confirm and corroborate. For he declares and claims, there is no God but God, and all on left and right, that is, those luminous reciters of God's names, lined up in the past and the future, repeat the same words and through their consensus, in effect declare, you speak the truth and what you say is right. What false idea has the power to meddle in a claim which is thus affirmed and corroborated by thousands? So that is the first droplet. Any comments, or anyone who'd like to just offer maybe a brief overview of the first droplet or anything that we talked about with regard to it last week? And if not, so what I had taken from it is, again, he begins, the author begins by saying that there are three things, right, that acquaint us, introduce us, make known to us our sustainer, our Rabb. And one is the book of the universe, right? The other is the seal of the prophets, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the third is the Quran. And here, what had attracted my attention and what some of the questions that we weren't able to fully flesh out last time, but one thing that attracted my attention is that twice in the introductory paragraph, he mentions the prophet with the title of the seal of the prophets, or Hatam al-Anbiya. And I thought to myself, like, that was interesting in terms of like why this emphasis on referring to the prophet as the seal of the prophets, right? Like, yes, we know him as the seal of the prophets, but he could also just refer to him as with a different title or a different way of addressing him. So is there something here of that notion, of that concept that we should be paying attention to when coming to know the Prophet better, or come to know the messengership of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam better, such that we come to know our sustainer better. So that's maybe one topic that we can either talk about now or keep in mind as we continue with the second droplet. But I guess the main question here that we should try to keep in mind or try to address is, when studying this topic, right? The topic is the messengership of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Like, why are we studying it? What benefit does it bring me? Do I just kind of get to know the Prophet better and that's kind of cool? Or is there something more to it? And I think the answer to that is, again, in that very first sentence of, there are three great and universal things which make known to us our sustainer. So the idea that the more I come to the better I become acquainted with the messengership of the Prophet, the better this will acquaint me with my creator, with my sustainer, with the one who is creating me at this very moment. So it will teach me something further, more intimately about my life, about my existence, the reality that I find myself in, and the one who places me here. But also that, when studying the messengership of the Prophet, like, we don't sort of come to know him in a vacuum, right? But we come to know him through what the Imam Nursi says is the collective personality, which includes being leader of believers, preacher to all mankind, which includes other prophets and saints, and this general like tree, if you will, of prophethood. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the first droplet. If there are no questions, or if you'd like to have your questions kind of percolate, then we can continue with the second droplet. Please go ahead, Abdurrahman.
I think I just wanted to make the comment that, one, it's interesting how he says there's three proofs, like the book of the universe, the seal of the prophets, and the other is the Quran of mighty stature. And like you might think with the seal of the prophets, it specifically looks to, it doesn't only look to Prophet Muhammad SAW, as far as I can understand. Maybe he is part of the tree, but when he's describing the seal of prophets, or the second one, he's talking about the roots, which is all the prophets, and he's even saying the living tree, and I guess the living roots. So these are not dead, and then so these are all the prophets, and then he talks about the saints. It's interesting he doesn't say scholars, because usually I don't know if that has any importance, but he usually talks about scholars and saints. But here I think he uses just saints or ABI Sayyid. I'm not sure if there's any specific reason for that, but there's this tree and there's branches, there's a prophet as, let's say, the trunk, and then there's the roots. But I guess the lesson for me is, it's not to learn about my sustainer. I don't just look at the Prophet ﷺ, just himself. Maybe if, let's say, I was a scholar of hadith and I knew all of the hadith by heart and everything, and I studied it all, even then I shouldn't just look at just the Prophet ﷺ, because there's everything else there. There's the other prophets, there's the branches, which are the currently, let's say, maybe they're not even alive right now. Let's say like Imam Nursi is one of these branches. We could take them as one of these branches, or other people around me, other figures around me are part of these branches. So all of this together becomes a tree. Like I can envision this as a tree, and all of those speak to me of my creator. Like, so I'm wondering if maybe I could just say this, the seal of the prophets is actually just my interactions with humans that speak to me of my creator. Could I even go as general as that, or is that losing the point there? But I guess there are humans that are following a certain tree or knowledge, studying under certain people. They're bringing some certain practices or teachings, and I'm somehow learning from these people. but the only way I can get into, like, I think the point is I shouldn't just be diving into history books, or maybe I can't attach the tree through history books. I need to find people, and I'm not just like one branch or one person. I need to find multiple branches, multiple different people, multiple different teachers, let's say, and that's the way I can start forming this tree. If I just dive into history books and read some hadiths, and especially if I read the Sirah, I get very little out of it, and maybe the connection is very forced. I feel like I have to force that connection. Um, yeah, I guess I just wanted to see it becomes more comprehensive when I look at it as a tree.
And I think it's very useful to, as you said, to realize that it's a living tree, right? Like even the other two sources that he writes that make known to us our sustainer, right? One is the universe, and he says book of the universe, but we can also understand that as speech of the universe, which he refers to elsewhere. And a speech is dynamic, it's ongoing, it's constant, it's not a dead text, right? And the universe is constantly being renewed, created, so that speech is very, very live, if you will. And if we look at the Quran is also, dynamic in the meanings that it offers me. And in one sense, we can say like living, if you will. It's not static. So I think there's a way in which we can understand all of these, including the messengership of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as things that are instructing me in a very dynamic fashion in my here and now, right now. And part of the messengership, I guess, is that, as you said, that tree of prophethood is so intimately connected with all the prophets, all the saints, all the scholarship, right, as well. That brings that message of the prophet to me, that brings news of him to me right now, that brings examples of his character, representations of his character to me right now, right? Through some of the texts that I read, through the people that I interact with, through those who, like as you said, like Imam Nursi, who comes from that lineage as well, from that scholarship, from that tradition as well, in delivering this message. Yeah, please.
So in the first sentences, he was mentioning the things that are, or the teachers that teach us or make us know about our sustainer, our Rabb. I think this is a part that first I need to admit to myself. Do I really think that I am being sustained? I am being provided? Do I have a Rabb? Because as much as I realize that I am being sustained, in what sense? Is it just my stomach is being sustained? Or pretty much everything that I am given is being given? Because generally we tend to take it on a very superficial level. I might say that, oh yeah, I mean, Alhamdulillah, God gave me food today. But when it comes to my ideas, I tend to say that, oh, I come up with a nice idea. Or I come up with a new business, and I say, well, I saw the opportunity and I got on it, and I'm a successful businessman. Like, I attribute it to myself. It's not that it is given to me, but I got it. So this might happen in various different places. So in certain parts, I sustain myself. In some other parts, my creator sustains me and whatnot. So we might be compartmentalizing it. And to the extent that I compartmentalize it, those three that he lists at the beginning wouldn't make that much of a sense. Because he says there are three things which teach me about my sustainer. The first one is the book of universe. The second one is the prophet. And the third one is Quran. The ordering is interesting in this sense. But if I do not realize I am being sustained, the ordering wouldn't make sense. This is why practically it's happening that, well, I don't really need prophet that much, one could say, because book is enough. And when it comes to book, even book is eventually being pushed away. universe is enough. Like, and this is all happening because I don't see myself as being sustained. This is what we have been studying for the past 4 weeks, when at the end, author was bringing it to the point that what do you own in this existence? Nothing. Like, you cannot lift your hand, you cannot function your mind. As I was talking to Tony before the discussion, I was asking about a friend, and he said like his mother is demented now, so he's dealing with his dementia. So we feel like, oh, I am smart, I think, and whatnot. It's being taken away from you as it was being given to you. So what is it that I own in this existence, really? Realizing that I am constantly being provided and sustained, how do I respond back to this? Because I am the needy one, he is the ever giver. In this relationship, me being the needy, I am really interested in learning about him. Once I realize this relationship, then I would say, well, tell me about him. Bring me his news. Whatever is possible there, I will go and knock all these doors. So then, because what Abdurrahman said is a common thing. People say, well, whether those hadith are reliable, or is it like coming from a strong chain, weak chain, this and that, let's get rid of all of it just to have a peace of mind and whatnot. Like, this sort of luxury comes in if I'm realizing that I know. I don't need that. But if I realize that, no, I am needy no matter what, I will go and expect to get something from any resource that's out there.
Any other thoughts? Then I suggest we continue with the second droplet. Any volunteers to read it? It's just a paragraph. I think we got a volunteer.
No, I was serious.
I think let's read them one by one. Inshallah.
All right. Second droplet. Just as that luminous proof of divine unity is affirmed by the unanimity and consensus of those two wings, so there are hundreds of indications in such revealed scriptures as the Torah and Bible all confirm and corroborate him, as do thousands of signs that appeared before the beginning of his mission. And the well-known news given by the voices from the unseen and the unanimous testimony of the soothsayers, the indications of the thousands of his miracles, like the splitting of the moon and the justice of Sharia. So his person and his laudable morals, which were at the summit of perfection, and in his duties, his complete confidence and elevated qualities, which were the highest excellence, and his extraordinary fear of God, with seriousness and fortitude, which demonstrated the strength of his belief and his total certainty in his complete steadfastness. This all show as clearly as the sun how eternally faithful he was to his cause.
So here he's listing all these different things, right, that confirm and corroborate the messengership of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and especially as he ends his morals, right, the perfection of his character, his confidence in his mission, his worship, seriousness, fortitude, and belief, and all of these he lists as different aspects that comprise of different aspects that make up that confirm his messengership. I just had a quick question in terms of the first sentence. When it's referring to those two wings, right? He refers to the Prophet as the luminous proof of divine unity is affirmed by the unanimity and consensus of those two wings. I couldn't quite understand what it's referring to by the two wings. I see. I see the past and the future. Okay. I see. Any thoughts on the second droplet? If not, we'll continue with the third. And then I guess we'll eventually read the fourth as well. But do you want to continue reading? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll return to it. So that, I mean, people. Yeah. I mean, no one raised their hand, so. Okay, all right, let's pause then, and let's gather up our thoughts on the second droplet.
So just to start the conversation. So at the end of the first, okay, we said we need a messenger, or I mean, we talked about it in different ways before, because this is week 9. But at the end of the first, he was mentioning how Mecca, Medina, like we talked about his life, how his the surface of earth become like a masjid. Pretty much we were looking at his life to conclude that he's the right person we are looking for. Now in the second droplet, we are looking from a different angle why this person is the person that we are looking for. There had been many people who claim to be messengers, or I shouldn't be getting my guidance from any random person either. Like I am looking for a person who should have proper qualities which can be my teacher, because I wouldn't like to waste my life or time with people that wouldn't worth listening to. So in the second droplet, now he starts talking about Torah and Bible, right? Previous scriptures that refers to the Prophet ﷺ. Or even he is talking about soothsayers. Should the word of soothsayers be an evidence for me, for example? We can ask that question. Yes, at his time, at the time of Prophet ﷺ, soothsayers said that this person is coming with a message, with a proper message. But today, I don't know if Tony would pay attention to soothsayers, but probably not, right? So
because there's a hadith said that they tell the truth followed by 100 lies.
yeah,
I would be skeptical, but it alludes to something that even they would, since they would tell the truth followed by 100 lies. Typically, you would expect the majority of what comes out of their mouth to be a lie, but in this case, they're affirming the truth. So something to be said about that.
yeah. So yeah, but in here he's somehow providing it or putting it as a sort of a source of truth. We can question why is this so. Likewise, Torah and Bible, we said that they're corrupted, yet they have signs to Messenger ﷺ. So to what extent can I take this as an evidence, for instance? But it looks like he's saying that these all say something which they put their finger on a common point, which makes it interesting for me to benefit from. So,
I think the suits.
no.
Microphone.
Things changed after you.
You guys have advanced. Do I have to press anything? It's already. No, I was just gonna say, since you pointed out to the soothsayers, I guess in some respect, he's saying that even liars cannot deny this truth, basically. So the way I gather it, once you elaborated a little bit on that. So that's all I wanted to add. Where is this going?
Man?
It seems like it's more fun now. You guys have made it a little more
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. Throwing things. It's not even working. May I, dear mother? Okay, thank you. So I was looking at the first point
I will need to talk later, sorry. Oh, she's here? Okay. I was looking at the first point, how he introduced the Prophet, ﷺ. He, after saying there are three things that make us know our sustainer, he says the first one is the book of the universe, and another is the supreme sign of the book of the universe. So in the book of the universe, he's saying that if you look at it, you will see these clear signs of the creator. You will see nothing but the artwork of the creator. And there is one artwork in the universe, which is the best one, right? And this is the Prophet. This is how we introduce. I think the important part here is he's introducing Prophet as like in relationship to the rest of the universe, right? So in that sense, when we say what is Prophet, what we expect from a prophet, it's not a like out of sudden extraordinary person. Like, who's this guy? Where's this guy come from? Right? We don't ask such a question. It's like it's a part of the universe, right? In Quran, for instance, the way it is explained, almost every time it talks about sending a prophet, it follows by a monk from you. Like we sent down this Quran, we send you the prophets, a monk from you, right? The minkum. So he is part of the universe, and what it means, whatever aspect of the universe you study and you look, you will see some signs of him. Like if you look at and the study, I don't know, like he's giving some extraordinary examples. He's like, if you look at the soothsayers, for instance, you will see something about him. If you look at the previous books and so on, you will see something about him. There will be always a continuation, right? He's not just one isolated person. He's the continuation of this artwork of the universe, right? He's the continuation of the thing that we call as the religion. From the first human being to the last prophet, is this continuation of, like there is a continuity there. If you look at the previous books, he says, you will see signs of him. You need to see signs of him. Like, even if you cannot find any sign from the old books, you would say, there must be something wrong with this book. Because there must be a sign about the prophet in these old books. Because why? These old books are coming from the same creator, just like the universe itself, right? It's coming from the speech of the same creator. If you look at a tree, for instance, you need to see a sign of the prophet there. Wherever you look, there must be a sign, there must be an indication of the prophet. There must be this continuity between, the previous religions and Islam. There must be continuity between, the source of knowledge and soothsayers are one type. You can also extrapolate this, what author is saying. If you, if you study history in a right way, you will see some signs of the prophet. Why? Because the history is the creation of the same creator. If you study any sciences, physics, biology, whatever, study it properly, you will see some indication of the prophet there as well. Whatever is being created by the same creator, and same creator is telling us that this is my best creation, the prophet. So you will, and you have to, you must see this indication of the prophet everywhere. So we can read the same, like we can read the miracles, he's talking about the miracles as well, in the same way. We say if the creator is sending down this, the prophet, and he is the one who creates everything around me, it is expected that the creator, just to confirm his prophethood, he will say, okay, I will create things in a different way just to confirm him. I'm the creator, right? So normally I give you, I don't know, 5 liters of the water to feed 10 people. 5 liters for 10 people. But just to confirm him, I will give him a glass of water and he will able to feed 100 people with just glass of water, right? He will pour on his hand and then, I don't know, 100, maybe 1,000 people will quench their thirst. There must be such things, actually. Like I say, it is expected that there must be such miracles because he's the creator of the universe. He's the creator of the water. He's the creator of my stomach, right? My body, everything in his control. And he is affirming, confirming that that's creation, the prophet. So the miracles make sense. It's not even something that I would be, how to say, like have some doubts. I would say, yeah, there must be some miracles. There must be some signs, indications in this creation to prove his messengership. Just like I see these indications everywhere I look, in soothsayers, old books, sciences that I study, the history, wherever you look, you will also look at the order in the universe. And within the breaking of this order from time to time, just to confirm him, I will see some indication of him as well. So miracles, yes, they are miraculous things, but it is expected there must be such miracles, actually. And when people say there have been some miracles, like splitting of the moon or all others, I say, yeah, okay, it makes sense, because there must be such things.
I had a quick question. In a paragraph, when it said the well-known news given by the voices from the unseen, typically I would think of angels and maybe jinn as the voices from the unseen, but is there a specific hadith or narration that speaks of, Muhammad being the final prophet, so on and so forth?
There are narrations about unseen creatures like jinn mentioning that he is the messenger, go and follow him, sort of things. And the reason that I think he is not bringing it up in here is, in this existence, it's not only about humans or material beings, but immaterial beings also support his prophet. So just to show that his duty is so universal, because at the beginning he was mentioning that there are 3 universal teachers: universe itself, Quran, and the messenger. So messenger's teacherhood is a universal teacherhood. Therefore, we are looking for supports from everywhere in the existence. He started with Torah and Bible, but not there from among jinn as well, even the soothsayers and whatnot. But in regards to soothsayers, another thing to maybe mention about this is we see magicians in Quran being mentioned, like sahir. So soothsayer is kahin. Like these are the people which were scholars of their age to a certain different type of science that they're dealing with. Like these are the people who people used to follow what they are saying. Yes, they do say 1 correct and 100 lies, pretty much like today's scientists. They say 1 truth, but there are 100 different incorrect interpretation of that truth. Like, yes, if you drink zinc, you will die. But is this because your biology is not going to handle it? Like, what creates death? The way then the interpretation comes, it happens by itself, as if, which is a huge lie. Yes, you will die, but the reason for your death is not the zinc itself. Death is going to be created by the creator who would tell you not to drink zinc. So those people had a way of finding knowledge or whatever. According to their testimony, they are saying that, well, we know what truth is, as Tony was saying. This is why in story of Musa alayhi salam, magicians challenged Musa alayhi salam the first. So they get into this encounter with him. They throw their sticks. Then Musa alayhi salam did his, and then they realized, oh, this is not trickery. We know what trickery means. Because somebody knowing trickery means they know more than the average people, and then they can trick those people with their knowledge. But they know what is right, what is wrong in the first place as well. This is why once they see the truth, they bow before the truth. So soothsayer is a knowledgeable person, more than the average person in the society. And then somebody comes and knows how to manipulate Tony. Let's say Tony comes to me and says, oh, what's going to happen to me? Well, I know I cannot know, but Tony doesn't know. So I manipulate Tony and do something, or maybe partially I know something, partially I don't know. But once the message of the messenger comes, they say, oh, this person's knowledge is way different than what we are doing. So their word is a valid testimony in this case, because they're the experts of just the opposite, the experts of lying in this case.
So that's an interesting way of looking at it, because usually when we think about soothsayers, magicians, and so on, we only think about these movie-like characters, like a mystic and so on, with usually a different type of clothing. But at that time, that might be true. But in our time, we still, as Yusuf said, we still have these people. Like the soothsayer is just a name to describe something. It's not like these people, like at that time, I'm not sure that people themselves were maybe calling themselves as soothsayer. I don't know. Maybe they were calling themselves something else. Doesn't matter. Or the magicians of the Pharaoh. Maybe they were calling themselves something else. Who cares? The point is, the word is describing their attitude, what they do. And for instance, the Quran describes magicians of the Pharaoh as they were doing these fancy things to make people say, oh, like this is how it is described. Like to make people fear, but fear in the sense that, wow, what a magnificent thing that you did. Right? This type of, the awe, fear. This is how magicians are described in Quran. And this is exactly how things happen today as well. Somebody, we see on TV explaining something with a very fancy jargon, making you convinced that he knows everything, but not you. Whatever he says, whatever she says is true. And you say, wow, look at the knowledge that he has or she has. Oh, look at the technology they created. Wow, they created AI, which will do this, which will do that, and so on. These are the magicians that Quran talks about in our age. Whatever? Yes. Oh, okay. yeah, not you. Then I'm not pointing you. I'm pointing to the people that you mentioned. The same way soothsayer, like the kahin giving us news from futures, so-called. We have thousands of them right now. Open any political discussion, any whatever discussion, actually, there will be people telling you what this will happen and then that will happen because of this, because of that, whatever, right? Nowadays, the explanations, the type of explanations changed. Now they use so-called reasoning, evidence, whatever you call. They combine the links in a way that you cannot see the links. So there's always a mysticism there as well. And as I said before, what Imam Nursi is telling now is actually, even if you look at what they say or what they try to do, you will see some indication of the Prophet or Prophet's message. So one example just came to my mind while Yusuf was speaking. Prophet says, and when we look at his life, alayhi salatu wasalam, he used to talk to his, the sweater, the animal, even the trunk that he stands up and so on. He's giving this message that everything is conscious. Everything is a living thing, actually, like even the things that you think not living. Now look at, what some philosophers or some scientists say. They say, oh, maybe this consciousness within may be more general than human beings or animals. Maybe it's so common that everything has some consciousness, right? So you see the overlap. Doesn't matter what they see is true or not, as Tony said, like a half truth, half lie, or maybe more lie. But you will always see some indication with what Prophet said. If you study them, if you look what they say, today's soothsayer, today's magicians, because they have to say at least a part of the truth, otherwise nobody would believe them, right? They give you a part of the truth covered by lies so that you will see the truth and, accept the lies as well. So they have to tell you some part of the truth. And this part will overlap with the Prophet's message, what Quran says. This is what I understood from the text when he talks about the soothsayer. Even the ones who deny religion, these the aggressive atheists or whatever, certain type of scientists, even when they are so against the religion, just listen to them, read their books, you will see some parts where they confess some truths which is overlap with Quran, which overlaps with Quran. It has to be that way, Imam Nur says.
Jazakumullah khair. Any other comments or questions either on the second droplet or just the topic overall on the messengership of Muhammad?
So he split it into two. So the text was split into two. The first part was those external evidences. Then came the internal parts in his person, like his morals, which was at the summit of perfection. And in his duties, his complete confidence and elevated qualities, which were of the highest excellence, and his extraordinary fear of God, worship, seriousness, and fortitude, which demonstrate the strength of his belief, his total certainty, and his complete steadfastness. So what he brings in, how serious was he in what he wrote? And also, did he demonstrate it in his life too? It might be that like there have been some theorists, especially when it comes to philosophy, the theories even about the lower class people comes from philosophers who are living in their luxury life and not sacrificing their own comfortable life in exchange for saving those people from their misery. So yes, at least this person is intellectually worried about poor people, but did he change his lifestyle to go and help poor people? No, not really, when it comes to philosophers. So the message that the Prophet brought in to what extent did he live by it? And I do see that whatever came out of his mouth was in his life as well. So he was very serious with his message, so much so that he didn't negotiate anything in his message, saying that, well, the circumstances not fit enough. So yeah, I would like to seize the power, and then once I get the power, I'm going to dictate what I find to be true. He never did that. So whatever was true as he was coming up with in his message, he said that even if you were to give me sun in one hand, moon in the other hand, I'm not going to step back from the message that I'm going to tell people. This tells quite a bit about his his seriousness, his certainness in his message, tells quite a bit about him being the right person that I'm looking for.
Sakla. I wanted to raise a question that, someone might have, let's say, which is, and it kind of goes back to Imam Nursi's referral to the Prophet as the seal of the prophets, which is that, one might say, well, I learned about the Prophet from my mom or my Sunday school teachers, or even from, people in this halaqah, rather than this sort of direct abstraction of the Prophet himself. So why, when listing the three things that make known to us our sustainer, would Nursi not just refer to as, the lineage of prophethood, or even tree of prophethood? Why this mention of the seal of the prophets? Because even when it comes to these internal reasons, right? His character, all these elevated qualities. Like, he's not sitting to me as Maryam is sitting, where I can just observe her and look at her and be like, oh yeah, like this is who she's like. There's always this sort of mediation, let's say. So how do I relate that mediation with the title of Seal of the Prophets? A question there.
I just want to keep adding some questions. I mean, the seal of prophets. I mean, I have a lot of issues with a lot of things here, but let's say from the seal of prophets, it feels very subjective even to say something is a seal. Like I would say, like, for me, okay, yes, it was the seal. Like, for it to be called objectively the seal, I mean, one, it's hard for me to understand how you could say that.
I might understood the text.
Maybe let me now go to that, because that's not too strong. But here in the text, it's saying, it's talking about the prophet, his extraordinary fear of God, his worship, his seriousness of worship. He's demonstrated his strength. Let's say, okay, he was a seal of prophets and everything like that. But I think these claims, they fall very weak for me, in the sense that I could read the hadith and I could see, yes, even if you gave me the moon and the sun, or all these different things, or the other hadith of, like, he would pray throughout the whole night, or all these things, but I wasn't there. I didn't see it. And I don't believe I can be convinced and have so much confidence in this and be like, it's clear as the sun, through narrations. And if I feel I'm lying to myself, if I say, yes, he was such a devout, stout, amazing, confident believer, because this person narrated that he was so. I think the way I understand this, and the way I can maybe be like, yes, I witnessed this, is, who do I have a personal connection to? It's, let's say, Imam Nursi. Through his writings, I have a much more personal, much more intimate connection. And Imam Nursi is talking about Rasulullah in this way. He's explaining him, saying what he has confirmed, what he has witnessed through his own teachers. And then maybe the other people around me who are maybe signs of this, I can witness that. And then I can be like, okay, yes, because these people act in this way, and they all are, citing the prophet or citing the teachers who were students of the prophet, then I can be like, yes, he must have been the most devout worshiper. He must have been, we were even studying the weeks before how he was the most beautiful creation. Honestly, to me, like, it's so abstract to say he must have been the most beautiful and most supreme sign. And like, how can I confirm this? Like, there's no way I can confirm this through historical text or through just narrations. The only way I can confirm that someone is the best of anything is if I can see them, I can witness it myself, or I can at least, listen to them, their speech or talks, or like a very comprehensive way of it being like narrated to me. And with the Prophet, I don't really see that directly from him. I see it from like the text we're studying or the people that we witness. So I think the only way I can confirm he's the most beautiful creation, the most supreme sign, or that all these different things, it's through other people. Like it's through seeing, oh, look at this one person in my life, how he represents this one quality so well. This, let's say, his quality of like pushing away the world and like attaching himself to knowledge and learning and like worship. And I'm like, oh, this must be a prophetic trait. So I guess I probably messed up the question, but I get my
I just wanted to
the
also
question. No,
let me just add a parentheses there, just
Can I
because.
finish my thought?
Can I add the parentheses?
Can I finish my thought? Just to finish, the last thing I wanted to say is, I'm not disagreeing with what's being said here, that this is a lie or it's a false, or no. I'm saying if we just take it, or if I try to take this for myself, it's like, oh, Nursi said this, and it just sounds like this is what we're supposed to believe in, and it sounds nice, and he was the most beautiful creation, he was extraordinary, he had devout worship. I think it's being dishonest for myself. I feel I'm being dishonest. Oh, I accept it. You said it, and I accept it. I signed my name in this petition to help this country, or like I signed my name in this petition to say Rasulullah was the best of creation. But I don't think it carries weight unless I witness it. And I think what I'm understanding here is the only way I can witness it is by seeing it through other humans and seeing how that connects to the prophet. Like, I can't witness it through only, let's say, text or it being written down like this. Like, I need to see this. I need to see other humans and how they represent these qualities. I'm like, oh, all of this leads back to the Prophet. Now I can like be like, yes, he must have been this way. And like, I guess we always talk about God, and it's getting long, but we always talk about God and say he must exist, or he must be one. And I think with the Prophet, I think in similar ways, I can only truly have a conclusion. He must have been the most beautiful one. He must have been the most devout one. He must have been like this. Because again, I don't have that firsthand account there. But I can say he must have been. Like, it's a conclusion.
Not this to convince yourself, basically, because if Nursi is mentioning all these qualities, he somehow convinced himself, even though he was not present in the time of Prophet, right?
Right. So this is for me, like, how can I share Nursi's conviction? How can I also be convinced in that way? How can I learn from Nursi and also find my prophet through Nursi and others around me, rather than it just being a memorized thing I know?
My parenthetical question, were allowed to be parenthetical, was just going to be on one comment that you made in passing. And I don't want to detract from everything else that you said, but at one point you said, I feel more intimate connection with Nursi than the Prophet. And to my knowledge, you've never met Imam Nursi or interacted with him either. Well, you said both. So I was just wondering, like, why you feel that connection, let's say, on a more intimate level with Imam Nursi than, say, the Prophet, when both, in one respect, are at the same distance. That's just one question amongst all your others.
No, I mean, you don't need to witness them, I guess, live, but you need to, the Prophet ﷺ, we have narrations of how he acted. It's not even like his own thoughts. I mean, some of this is words, of course, but it's with Nursi's text, you have thousands and thousands of pages of text. And that's why I feel it's much easier to have an intimate relationship with Nursi and, you know, a personal connection there. Where with the Prophet ﷺ, I find it very difficult. Like I've tried to like read the different seeras and things like this and like try to, I just find there's like a vast gap I can't jump over somehow.
Trust anyone. Let's say you go to a teacher, you never seen him study a subject or do any research or his whole background. How would you trust him to be expert in the subject?
Like for anyone?
Yeah, for anybody, how would you trust? Like, why would you love your mom if you never see her? You can never witness her giving birth to you.
May I chime in? Yes. So before this gets into an infinite loop. So I start from the okay. So like I mean, since we are many things are going on in here, but I think we need to put things into proper context. So for instance, we talk about Socrates, Plato. Socrates has never written his own texts either. But we know about Socrates because Plato talked about what his teacher taught him. And we take Socrates to be like such an elevated thought person. And we do appreciate his sacrifice of his life for what he considered to be true. Of course, one could argue that was Socrates really a historical person, or was it like a legend and whatnot, which they do for Jesus as well and whatever. But I mean, if I'm not going to get that cynical, but talk about, yes, I do have a teaching which was observed by the first-hand students of that person and has been taken down to me. This has some value. It's not, totally unreliable or whatever. It has some value. And in this case, Plato, being the student of Socrates, saying that, this is what my teacher has taught me, and he just keeps writing it down. And you can take many such examples. I mean, in this example, we are saying, okay, Nursi has written the text himself. But even when it comes to the text, I would say it's partially reflecting what Nursi has taught, if now I'm going to consider Nursi. So when it comes to Prophet ﷺ, hadith or historical narrations about the Prophet tell us something about him. So it cannot be, I cannot simply say that, I cannot rely on this. You do rely on it to a certain extent. Pretty much like you are relying on AT&T's network when it comes to relying on the email that you receive from your boss. I mean, history could have its issues, but it does have a certain value as well. So perfectly 100% true or totally trash, I don't think we are in this both endpoints. So historical account tells me something, but we are not at the mercy of these historical accounts only. Like in here, he was mentioning prophets' worship. So prophets' worship, when it comes to prophets' supplication, because worship also means not only how he was worshiping day in, day out, which is an observation. Like, for example, when they mentioned that Prophet ﷺ didn't skip doing the prayer with Jama'ah in the battlefield. This tells me something. And this being brought to me in the witnessing of hundreds of people in this battlefield. So this shows seriousness of him in his worship. So hearing this news, tell me something about the messenger. But at this moment, I don't find it healthy to start saying, how about the trustworthiness of this narration? Because then we go to trustworthiness of any narration, including AT&T's sending you your boss's email. It's another transmission. Well, you do trust in the email because you don't really know if your boss will send this email. Gmail says that you have a new email from your boss. You say, well, you don't call the boss and say, well, did you really send the email? AT&T networks. I mean, we do have a reliance on communication channels to a certain extent. So that's why I wouldn't be too much supportive of the idea of all or none. This being said, every narration or every source of information has its reliability or its value. Yes, narration telling something about messenger, and there are different levels of authenticity of those narrations and whatnot, assuming that we are aware of this. But then on top of this, he started by saying the justice of Sharia. This is the outcome of prophetic life, Sharia, which is available for you right now in books as well as in the life, in the society life. So observing Sharia and saying that, what does this tell me about the source of this Sharia? Sharia is path, the life path for the individual and society that the Prophet set forth. Sharia is one over there. Socialism is another one. Capitalism is another one. Each one of those ideas are contributed by various individuals. Compare them. This is a source of information for you readily available to tell about the messenger. But then coming to your point, live students, which was important part as we were mentioning from the beginning, live students of this teaching, what do they smell like? Let me put this word. I think Rumi has a metaphor for this. He was taking wudu and a piece of mud come to his body and he smelled it and it was smelling like rose. So even if it's a mud, it tells where it is coming from. It's coming from a rose garden that it smells like rose. So it's a metaphor to say that whomever is coming from a certain teaching carries you the smell of its teacher. So now that you see students of the messenger, they carry the smell, the prophetic smell to you. This is where now you will see the prophetic character in action. That's going to give you another type of conviction. I don't think one needs to be overdoing the other, because we are going to see multiple droplets here. In every droplet, he's going to provide us various different angles. I would suggest against one or like all or none approach. All of them are going to put together, like for instance, how they make rope. A rope is not a single structure. A rope is multiple thin strands put together and like rolled together to make a rope. If you dissect this rope and say that, oh, is this tiny thing, is this going to carry it? And then throw away every single strand of a rope, no rope is going to stay. So expecting a single super strong evidence is such an injustice to truth and to yourself as well. So I would say everything that's mentioned in here carries one aspect of truth. It's not one of them, probably not going to be 100% strong enough to support the point. They're all partially pointing to the same point. And then you see that, oh, once I combine all of them, then they become a rope. Expecting this, like for example, soothsayers. As if a soothsayer says he's the messenger, is this by itself enough to say that he is a messenger? Of course not. Of course not. But if you put it together with others, then you're saying that all of these are pointing the finger to the same point. And I was looking for an answer for this question. Is Muhammad والسلام, is the prophet that I'm looking for? Because at the end of 18th word, as we studied before, he said there must exist a perfect human being. Now I'm looking for who might be that perfect human being. Because there's a person who is agreed upon many to be that perfect person, but is he really? What's your evidence for that? Now we are trying to find evidences that demonstrates his exemplariness of his perfection. So I think when it comes to that, we will make use of anything and everything that's available out there. And with my tiny, I don't know if it's going to be relevant, but it's being extremely relevant to me when it comes to this example. And since we have a doctor here, he's radiologist, like those MR images and whatnot, they are low resolution grayscale images. They are nothing like your 12 megapixel iPhone pictures, right? They're grayscale images. They don't look that good, but that is the best you get. Alternative to opening up your skull and seeing what is in there. Because if you open up the skull to just see if everything is okay, you already killed the patient. You don't want to do that. What do? What's your best tool? Those X-ray images or MR images, get them and try to make the best use of them for your own good. When it comes to having an access to Prophet's life, if what you have at hand is the narrations, and those narrations are of high quality as much as it could have been, what you would rather do is, how much can I benefit from that? Rather than saying that, oh, I cannot take anything from this, it's not as strong. Pay attention to it to the extent that it tells you something. So I think this is just to say that all or none is not how we live life in general, which shouldn't be applied in here either. That's my 5 cents.
If you can expand on the definition of perfect human being, because different people can have different understanding of perfect human being, and if somebody's not religious and they're looking for a perfect human being, their definition is completely different. So
I mean, I was just referring to the end of the 18th word, which we studied for 3 weeks or so, where he was talking about 2 spheres, saying that in this universe, we do see a rububiyyah, everything is being taken care of. And in response to this rububiyyah, we do see ubudiyyah, servanthood, offering your thanks. So, I mean, it's going to take too much to repeat what we discussed in those 3 weeks. But in there, our conclusion was, like the opening sentence of this text, pretty much paraphrasing it was, since there is beauty in this creation, Muhammad ﷺ must be the messenger of God. This was his very bold statement. And he put all those arguments in between. But by perfection, I'm referring to this text. So it's not like a common or memorized sentence. So it's referring back to those previous discussions. But I agree. Yes, it could be taken any way. But in that context, I was referring to perfect human being.
I was proactively thinking about answering this question. So we can read this text as Yusuf beautifully summarized, which is like, let's assume we convinced there must be a prophet, and now we checking whether this a candidate, Muhammad ﷺ, whether is a prophet or not. And I guess the main reason the text was written is more on that side. We can also read the text, though, in another way, slightly another way, not completely, to serve our, let's say, the focus, our goal, which is to understand what we really mean when we say prophet. Okay? So just to give some comparisons. For instance, when we look at the idea of prophet in Christianity, just a comparison, not to say, poo-poo them. But the idea of the prophet in Christianity, at least, just overall, is just a man. Just a man who has some, let's say, vague connections with the prophet, with the creator. But the rest of their lives is just their lives. And this is expected because in this religion, the worldly life is completely separate from the religious life, let's say, right? There's this separation between church and state. That's one of the tenets. In that regard, it is expected when you talk about a prophet, let's say, he has his own life, has his own issues, sometimes tackling with them in a right way, sometimes wrong way, like in the example of Noah, may Allah forgive me, according to that narration. Maybe sometimes he is trying to forget things by drinking, getting drunk. Or in case of another prophet, the Suleiman, sometimes acting in a very ugly way in certain situations. It is expected, they're just men, right? They're just, in today's jargon, they are just white men. It is expected they will do terrible things. Anyway, so this is one thing, and maybe this is one reason when we say Jesus was a prophet, the Christian people overreact, like, because the prophet in their case is just a man with many mistakes and so on, but some relationship with the God. When we look at the definition or the idea of prophet in Quranic teaching, though, or the way it is explained here, author says the prophet is the one, no matter from what aspect you look, you see a connection with the Creator. Even a single breath of him wouldn't be wasted, wouldn't be for nothing. It would be for worshiping. It would be for, in another way, like from my perspective at least, it would be a guidance for you to connect with your Creator. This is the prophet, the perfect being in that sense. Perfect in a sense, every step of him, every action of him, every silence of him, every word of him would be there to make a connection between you and your Creator. That's the reason we have all these narrations. The companions around him didn't take it lightly, didn't say that, yeah, he is the messenger. From time to time, he brings message, we should study them, but the rest is his own life. It's his own business. They didn't say that. They even took note about, forgive me, but how he would go to the restroom. Because they knew, even with his steps to the restroom, whatever they used to call it, there is a message there. This is the way we should be also taking our steps, they would think. That's the prophet, the idea of prophet. It's the perfect creation, it's the perfect part of the universe to teach us about our Creator. With his manners, it is part of it. Meaning the manners must be perfect, not in the sense that he would never get upset. That's not the perfection. The perfection is when he is upset in a way that would make a connection with the Creator. His upsetness, sadness, would make him closer to his Creator. And by looking at it, by studying his sadness, I can also learn how to tame my sadness to get closer to my Creator. When he is angry, he's a perfect being, not in the sense that he was never angry. No, he was angry, but his anger for me, is a means to connect with my creator. That's the idea of prophet in the Quranic wisdom. As Aisha radiallahu anha would describe, he is the walking Quran. I mean, whatever you see in the Quran, it is in his steps. Whatever you see in his steps, you would see in Quran. So in that sense, he is the perfect. In that sense, he is the most loving. Not that, he was so loving everything. No matter what they do, how they act and so on. So no, he was not naive. He was just loving in a way that would perfectly fit to the rest of the creation. The mercy I see in the creation, I would see the same mercy in his loving. So in that sense, he's the most loving person. So I think this idea, like this way of thinking to prophet, is very unique to Islam, or the religion that as we call Islam today, because we think that it was same with Jesus as well. It was same with Moses as well. But today, some people make some, made up, at least, some stories about them. But from our perspective, we said, no. The Moses must be in his time, within his context and circumstances. With every action of him, he would somehow make a connection with the Creator. We wouldn't say, I wouldn't believe, for instance, if somebody says, Moses was a great guy, but he was so angry from time to time, he acted out of control. Like before, after his prophethood, let's say. I wouldn't believe such a thing. No matter what stories they make up. Because there cannot be such a prophet, I would say. There might be some error-like things which are directly corrected in their lives, so that even from their so-called errors, is it zelle in Quranic term? Yeah. From their zelle, like, how would you say? My feet slips, slips. From their slips, I can make a connection with my Creator. Even with their slips, like the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, also we have some narrations in which he slips, right? Like he, for instance, changes faces when the blind person comes and so on. But even within this slip, the way it is corrected and the way he corrects himself, let's say, there's a message for me. How am I going to, let's say, make istighfar when I slip? Yeah.
Can I say something?
I'm done.
Okay, we have a few minutes left, but I was going to say, I feel like Abdurrahman's question still remains a little unanswered, right? And that if I have, let's say, a great grandfather who was really esteemed and noble in my family, and I grew up with stories about him from my grandmother, right? That would be her father, and it's not even me questioning the veracity of those stories, but there's a degree in which the one who interacted with him, right, and all the ways that he walked or talked or ate, there's an intimacy that the one who experienced that firsthand would have versus the second, third, fourth, fifth degree that I have just by knowing stories or, in the case of the Prophet, narrations. So how do I, gap that distance such that my access to the Prophet is it just the fact that I have to accept that, yes, there will always be a distance between me and, let's say, the Sahaba? Or is it that, no, I can have equal access to him through X, Y, and Z? Like, I don't know if this was exactly his question, but that's the question that remains for me. And We have 3 minutes, so if you have
I
a
want
quick
small
answer
example for
to
that.
that would be great. That like really summarizes it and just hits it in the spot.
It's not an answer, but maybe like a nice example just for
Okay,
this question.
so
A teacher of mine once he said, like he asked, how do you know a tree is a cherry tree? You either look at the leaves or eat the fruit and say that, oh yeah, this is cherry, so that must be a cherry tree. So the same way, how do you know the prophet was, let's say, loving? You either look at the leaves, as old the Imam Nursi says, the saints that were trained by his lineage. You look at the leaves, you say that, okay, this must be leaves of a loving tree, the prophet. Or you eat the fruit, the scholars, or the people who somehow carrying the lineage of the prophet, and when you look at them, you say, okay, there's this common thing about them, which is they're all merciful. They're trying to be at least merciful. Right? You say, okay, the tree must be the cherry tree. The tree must be the loving tree. You don't have to say that.
So, I just wanted to add something small to this. If I think I understand his question, I'll give an example on how I deal with something like that. So obviously, it's far removed. I mean, in terms of we're talking about 1,000 years plus. And so we obviously have the narrations that explain the observations that were made about him and his life. Typically, the way I would deal with that is obviously you become aware of the narration and the observations that were written about him. But then you got to take your experience into it. And kind of you alluded to the cherry tree, right? You have to have the cherry in order for you to recognize it's a cherry tree. I think you apply it to your experience, basically. So obviously there is information. In this case, it would be a hadith. And then you take that information and apply it to your experience. And that should be able to either solidify your faith in the stories and the narrations, but also solidify the fact that that piece of information is actually benefiting you and it's telling you something true about him, but also something true about the experience. So in this case, it would be like, I guess the old American expression of the proof is in the pudding, right? And so that's the way I deal with something like that. So the information is key here. Obviously, the narration is needed, but the key thing here is actually the information. And I think the information connects you to that truth.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you. Brother Yusuf, did you have a final comment?
Oh, no.
No? Are you sure? All right, let's give the mic on a final comment from Abdurrahman. Maybe he'll leave us with some
Anything,
exciting cliffhangers for next week's discussion.
don't be the devil's advocate. Go easy on us.
No, I think it was a helpful discussion. The part where I guess I was struggling is we talked about Muhammad Salam, the most beautiful creation. We talk about, I mean, the way Nursi is saying he was steadfast, he was serious, he demonstrates strength of belief. Like he speaks almost as if he's witnessing it, like very strongly. And of course, I can be like, yes, of course, my prophet was that way, and agree and be like, yes, there's all these like indications of it. But I was thinking, how do I actually witness that myself, or how can I witness it? Is it possible to witness it, as you were saying? And I think this idea of my own experiences it's very important. What I'm getting here is, and this is my my understanding of the tree of prophethood, is there are these narrations, and let's say, and I'm not even like questioning the veracity of them. Let's say they're all extremely 100% accurate. But the way for these narrations to become meaningful for me as a human is if I can now go and witness other humans that are reflecting those narrations or reflecting the traits of the prophet back to me. Like If I hear narrations of the Prophet's generosity and mercy, and in my life, I should now see, okay, how is the tree of prophethood reaching me? Or how can I now witness these reflections on people around me? I see someone who is a Muslim, who is trying to practice, who is believing, and I see how generous they are or how merciful they are. Like the prophetic teaching or the Quranic teaching has reached this person, and now they're acting merciful and generous in one way. And there I can be like, oh, this must have been how a similar to how the Prophet was. Now that narration is something I like, truly the Prophet was merciful. Like I think otherwise I'm realizing it just stays as like memorization for me. Like, and I'm seeing the importance of the tree of prophet is that's the only way I can truly be convinced of it, is if I then seek around myself and be like, oh, this is what that is. This is what this is. Like if I was just in a room by myself, reading the narrations, reading the Quran, I wouldn't have access to that. And I guess I'm seeing the importance of the tree of prophethood more. So alhamdulillah, I think it was a good discussion.
Jazakallah khair. Then may our Creator keep us in prophetic company. Inshallah, we'll continue next week. Jazakallah khair for everyone's comments, presence, and reflections. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين آمين. السلام عليكم.